All right, let's begin taking a look at absolute value equations. To do that, we really need to think about what the absolute value means. And by definition, the absolute value is the distance a number is from zero. What's important here is to recognize that the absolute value is a distance. So let's think about distance. Let's find the distance between 9 and 5 and take a look at it on the number line. So we remember that with the number line, we'll start at 0, then go to 1, and we keep going up until we get to 5. And then we would keep going 6, 7, 8, 9 until we find 9. And when we want to find the distance between them, all we have to do is really count how many steps it takes to start at 5 and get over to 9. And that's just 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Okay? Very elementary math idea, right? Now, how do we find that distance? And we would find that distance, get 4 using 9 and 5 by just taking 9 minus 5. So that first number minus the second number. But what if we want to find the distance between -9 and -5? Well, thinking about it on a number line, since we're dealing with completely negative numbers, that would make 0 start on the right, and we would start counting backwards from there, and we'd keep going until we get to -5. Here's -6, -7, -8, -9. Now, just because they're all negative, the idea is still the same, that we want to find that distance between them, and we just count. Starting on the left here, we go 1, 2, 3, 4 steps to get over to that 5. However, if we were to just start with the first number and subtract off the second number, that would leave us with -4. And the distance between those two is not a negative number. That's why we need this idea of absolute value. The distance between two numbers is not going to just be that difference of the two numbers, like 9 minus 5 or -9 minus -5, but it'll be the absolute value of those. The absolute value of 9 minus 5 is 4. And the absolute value of -9 minus -5 is going to be +4 as well. So when we want to find the distance between 9 and -5, we can just subtract those two numbers and take 9 minus -5. But remember that the distance is going to be an absolute value. So 9 minus -5 would be 14. And we can see that since 9 is positive, that means it'd be to the right of 0. And since 5 is negative, that would be to the left of 0. And counting that distance, starting at -5, it would take 5 steps here to get to 0, and then from 0 to 9, it would take 9 more steps. So altogether, that's 14 steps. Now, you might be thinking that this is all kind of silly, that if I have two numbers, I would just take the big one and subtract the little one. But what if those two numbers are A and B, are variables, they're representing numbers that we don't know? Then, well, since we don't know them, I don't know if A is here and B is here, or maybe B comes first and A is larger. We really don't know, so we can't just take the larger one because we don't know which one is larger. But we do know it's going to be, the distance between them is going to be their difference between A and B. Just maybe that difference becomes a negative number or a positive number. So to make distance always positive, we'll put those absolute values in. Now let's take a look at this idea kind of from the other side, that when we're given the absolute value, here we have the absolute value of x. And what that means for us is that the absolute value of x is the distance that x is from 0. And if I'm looking at a number line, I know that 0 is right here in the middle. But where is x? Not really certain. We could go out this far and find x over here, or we could find x over here. Either way, that distance is the same. It just, we don't know if x is going to be a positive number or a negative number. But this idea is helpful for us when we want to solve equations, that if I have an equation like the absolute value of x is equal to 5. Now that means that distance, the distance in red between the 0 and the x, that distance is 5 units. Meaning that the length of this span between 0 and x is 5 units, either this way or this way, to the right or to the left. That would mean that our solutions, if x is to the right of 0, 5 units to the right of 0, x would equal 5. Or if we were to go to the left of 0, x would be negative 5. And we end up with two solutions for the absolute value equation. So what does it mean when we have the absolute value of x minus 7? Well, what we saw before was that when we're subtracting two quantities, that's how we find that distance between them. So this is really the distance that x is from 7. And when we look at our number line, we can think of 7 as being right here. And then we're either going to go to the left or the right and find x. But no matter which way we go, we're going to go that same distance, and that is what the absolute value is. So this is actually absolute value of x minus 7, and so is this. How that becomes helpful for us is when we want to solve the equation, the absolute value of x minus 7 is equal to 5. Because if that distance is 5 units, if that absolute value is 5, we're either going to go 5 units to the left or 5 units to the right. And if I were to count 5 units to the left, well, that would mean that x would have to be 2. And if I were to go 5 units to the right, that would mean that x would have to be 12. And there are our two solutions. I hope you're noticing that when we're solving absolute value equations, we keep getting two different solutions for our answer. Let's try one more. When we have absolute value of x plus 11, that's going to mean the distance between two things. But remember, we found distance using subtraction, and here we have addition. So it's important to rethink of this absolute value as a subtraction problem. And what we're subtracting is negative 11. So that would be the distance between x and negative 11. So we think about finding negative 11, and we would go a certain distance to find our x. Right? So x is either over here or it's over here. Then when we have an equation like the absolute value of x plus 11 is equal to 5, that would mean that that distance is going to be 5 units. So if I were to go to the left 5 units, I'd start at that negative 11 and start counting 5 units to the left. So negative 11, 12, 13, it would end up subtracting those 5 units and getting x is equal to negative 16. Or we could go those 5 units the other way, to the right, which would mean we start at negative 11 and add 5 units to it. So we're at x is equal to negative 6. And there are our two solutions. So to take a look at just a couple more examples, here we have the absolute value of x minus 11 equals 23. Since we have x minus 11 inside the absolute value, we're finding the distance between x and that 11. So think about 11 as being in the middle. And then we're going to go out to find our x's. How far are we going out? 23 units, either to the left or the right, which means x is equal to 11 plus 23, or x is equal to 11 minus 23. In this case, we're dealing with an answer of 34, or in this case, negative 12. And when we have addition in the middle, remember to look at that as being x minus negative 13. All right, so we're looking at the distance between negative 13 and x. So we're going to start at that negative 13 and then go out and find x. How far are we going out? 4 units, either to the left or to the right. So our two solutions are going to be that x is negative 13 minus 4 to go over to the left, or x is going to be negative 13 plus 4 to find that x is on the right. And then we just do a little bit of arithmetic. and we get two solutions of x equals -17 or x equals -9.